Hello everyone. The topic that I'm going to discuss is about the family Liliaceae, or as simply as Lily family. This covers its classification and nomenclature, structure and form, including its diagnostic characters, its leaf, stem, root and flower, reproduction, including its gametophyte development, pollination, seed development and fertilization, and lastly, human and ecological relevance. Let's start with classification and nomenclature. The lily family belongs to a kingdom called Plantae, which is eukaryotic or has a nucleus, autotrophic or able to produce their own food via photosynthesis, and they are also multicellular. Next, they belong to subkingdom called Tracheobionta or vascular plants. These plants having vascular tissues, xylem and phloem. Next, this family belongs to superdivision called Spermatophyta, also known as phanerogams or pinogams. These are the plants that produce seeds. Next on line, this family belongs to phylum or division called Magnoliophyta or flowering plants. This family belongs to class called Liliopsida or monocotyledon plants. Next on rank, this family belongs also to subclass called Liliaceae, a lily order having syncarpous monocotyledons with both the sepals and the petals usually petaloid. Next, it also belongs to Liliales, an order of the monocotyledons plants with complete, perfect, and typically trimerous flowers, a compound ovary, and seeds with an oily or fleshy endosperm. Next, family Liliaceae, our topic today. They are monocotyledonous, perennial, herbaceous, often bulbous geophytes. Plants in this family have evolved with a fair amount of morphological diversity despite genetic similarity. Next, Liliaceae family comprises 50 genera and approximately 600 species of flowering plants, with many of them being used as spices and vegetables. Next, structure and form of the lily family. I'll be discussing about its diagnostic character, its leaf, stem, root, floral characters which include inflorescence, flower, androecium, and gynosium, and lastly family Liliaceae's fruit and seeds. Diagnostic character. The lily family is a perennial herbs with underground bulbs, corms, and rhizomes. When we say bulbs, bulb in botany is a modified stem that is the resting stage of certain seed plants, particularly perennial monocotyledons. A bulb consists of a relatively large, usually globe-shaped underground bud with membranous or fleshy overlapping leaves arising from a short stem. An example of these are onion and garlic. Next, corms. A corm or bulbotuber or a bulbotuber is a short, vertical, swollen underground plant stem that serves as a storage organ that some plants use to survive winter and other adverse conditions such as summer drought and heat. An example of these is colchicum. And lastly, rhizome, also called creeping rootstock. Horizontal underground plant stem capable of producing the shoot and root system of a new plant. Rhizomes are used to store starches and proteins and enable plants to perennate or to survive an annual unfavorable season in the underground. An example of this is aloe vera. Let's proceed to its leaf, stem, root, floral character, fruit, and seeds. Let's begin with its leaf. The leaves of the lily family is mostly basal. Leaves form a circle at the base of the stem. It also alternate, and it also linear or having a long, narrow leaf shape with sides that are almost parallel with each other. And lastly, the leaves are exstipulate or entirely absent and the venation is usually parallel. Its stem could be aerial stem. An example of this is yucca. It also be underground stem. This could be in the form of bulb, corms, and rhizomes, or maybe claydod or having a flattened leaf-like stem. An example is asparagus. The family Liliaceae root is mostly having adventitious root. Next, floral character. Inflorescence or the arrangement of the flower could be solitary, which means inflorescence consists of a single flower. It may be terminal or axillary. In the cymose type of inflorescence, the main axis does not grow continuously. The flowers are borne in a basipital order. The main axis has limited growth, often umbellate cluster. When we say umbellate cluster, it's inflorescence that consists of a number of short flower stalks called the pedicels, which spread from a common point. Some look like umbrella ribs. Lily's flower is bisexual and it is actinomorphic, which means a flower that can be divided into equal halves along any diameter. Moreover, having periantipal, which is 6, 3 plus 3, often united into tube. And lastly, valvate aestivation, which is the sepals or petals in a whorl just touch one another and they do not overlap one another. Androecium, having 6 stamen, which is 3 plus 3. And lastly, of the floral characters is gynosium, tricarpellary or having or made up of 3 usually fused carpels, it also having a united carpel or syncarpus. Having superior ovary, trilocular or having 3-chambered ovary. And lastly, axial placentation or having septa dividing the ovary into 3 locules. Liliaceae fruit type is mostly capsule, rarely berry. When we say capsule, capsule is the most common fruit type. Capsule is a dry fruit which splits open to release the seeds. Liliaceae seed is endospermous. Endospermic seeds are those that have an endosperm in the mature seed. It is fleshy, oily, surrounds the embryo, and functions as a food storage organ. Moving to reproduction. In this part, I'm going to discuss its gametophyte development, pollination, seed development, and fertilization. When the ovules, megasporangium, is a large diploid cell called the megasporocyte. The megasporocyte divides by meiosis and gives rise to 4 haploid cells. But in most species, only one of these survives as the megaspore. 3 mitotic divisions of the megaspore form the embryo sac, a multicellular female gametophyte. The ovule now consists of the embryo sac along with the surrounding protective tissues. Each one of the microsporangia contains diploid microsporocyte. Each microsporocyte divides by meiosis to produce 4 haploid microspores, each of which develops into pollen grain. A pollen grain becomes mature male gametophyte when its generative nucleus divides and forms 2 sperm. This usually occurs after a pollen grain lands on the stigma of the carpel and the pollen tube begins to grow. When ripe pollen from an anther of the same kind of flower catches on the stigma, each pollen grain sends out a tiny thread-like tube. The tube grows down through the style and pierces one of the ovules in the ovary. This process called fertilization. Each ovule must receive the contents of the pollen tube before it can develop into a seed. It usually takes the tube from 2 to 5 days to reach the ovule. By the time may vary from a few hours or 6 months. And last part is the human and ecological relevance. Many of these plants belonging to this family are good ornamentals. An example of these are Tulipa and Gloriosa for having a beautiful flowers which are good in landscapes. This family is also good at medical purposes. An example of this is aloe vera. Aloe vera known for its antibacterial, antiviral, and antiseptic properties. This is part of why it may help heal wounds and treat skin problems. You can also find in this family varieties of vegetables. An example is asparagus. Its young shoots are used as a spring vegetable. And lastly, colchicine, a medication used to treat gout and Behçet's disease. This kind of medication can be found in colchicum or the naked lady's flower. Here are the references.